There are two tasks which we are completing when we talk with people. The first task is quite obvious, would be the exchange of information. Um, it's our part of this exchange. It's to pass the message. Maybe we want to warn someone, or we want to inform them. Right. And so we want to cooperate, or uh, we want to threaten and warn people, and we would use our communication, right? We would use the language. But the second task is to find out how the other person sees the world. How does the other person understands us? We're looking at the response. Silence completes the meaning too. So, whichever would be the response of the person to which we are communicating to, we would accomplish the goal of realizing uh, how is our information accepted, and therefore what is our information, like what the actual value of this information, what is the reality of this information. Because how can you know whether something is actually real if it's only inside of your mind, right? So another task that you're trying to accomplish is to see the world outside of your mind and to make sure to uh, double check, verify that it's accurate and real, and that you're not delusional. Because the threat that is always there, the danger is that you're not seeing and understanding accurately. Remember, your awareness, your consciousness, is not complete. There are too many unconscious processes, um, motives, and um, information. It's been said that 98% of everything that we do uh, is unconscious. And so we don't grasp the whole picture. And we have a pretty limited capacity too, right? And we are aware, at least partially, of that, at least unconsciously too, because this is the literal threat to our survival. And that's why we would be careful with it, consciously or unconsciously. And so we are aware that we discover the reality consciously, we make sense of it consciously. um, it's not given to us completely, we discover it, we are thinking about it, we experience it, but we are unable to experience everything at once. We experience it only in as much as we interact with it, with people, with objects, with reality in a whole. We experience it in as much as we interact it. We understand it in as much as we um, have experienced it also. Because well, if we would have any information, facts given to us, we would struggle to accept them unless we had experienced them at least partially. We would not know how to make the sense of these facts and how to put them in our framework of understanding. And Herbert Clark, he writes about it in his book Using Language. And um, He's mentioning that speaking is not an individual act, it's a joint performance between people uh, who try to coordinate the goals. And that autonomous understanding of the world, autonomous intentions, they are insufficient without the mutual recognition. And the mutual recognition functions as a mechanism for incremental meaning construction. It's like we generate the meaning. We generate the meaning together. It's the joint process. I communicate to you what I'm able to comprehend, what I can comprehend, and I look at your response and try to make sense what you tell me about what I uh, have given to you, about the information I gave you. And so this is a joint process, and it's the process of the feedback correction. You need to identify and be quick with it to identify the errors within your understanding, within your picture, and you need to correct them. But how can you identify the errors that you fail to see on your own? You literally need someone else to help you out with it. And so whenever we are interacting with other people, it's not only that we're transmitting to them our information, it's also that we're receiving the information out on our information out of their response. That is, even if they are not telling us the information, if they are not saying it to us, we would still receive some information about of the information we've been giving to them about um, how is what we see or know to be or experience to be is actually accurate for other people, right? Um, and he writes in his book that language uses a form of joint action. One person does depend on what the other is doing. So we depend on each other. And therefore, if generating the meaning, if understanding the world is a dependent process, right? Then, uh, well, it's happening in what? In this mutual activity. And so, um, which would mean that conversation or interaction requires the mutual alignment uh, of intention. You have to be aligned with your attention, at least, let's say. You have to be aligned in understanding, or otherwise, you wouldn't be able to have a productive conversation. And to be aligned in attention, you also have to be aligned in the goal. And so, if you're not able to have the conversation and have the communication. And this is the good feedback for you, because if uh, because we are social creatures and we correct ourselves to um, satisfy the social goals, uh, and even you can say needs, which would mean that if or when other people struggle to understand us, when we struggle to cooperate with them productively in a conversation, to be aligned in goals and in understanding, we would search for the ways to correct our behavior, and therefore um, this would be a joint activity of the making sense of the world, generating the meaning. Um, and in his book, he is claiming that intention alone doesn't produce meaning, because a person can mean something privately, but unless the listener recognizes and accepts that meaning, communication fails. So you can, let's say, distinguish individual intentions, what you plan to do, and participatory intentions. It would be what you could do with someone else, with others. And in a world which constitutes other agents, and in the context of your social needs, you transit from individual intentions to participatory intentions, from what you plan to do to what you plan to do with someone else. And that's how you're constantly generating meaning with other people. And the position of I will express my opinion changes to the position of I will express my opinion so that you could understand me and respond to me. And well, we can experience it in our lives that the conversation becomes completely useless when people stop understanding each other because they start shouting, they are starting to be aggressive, and conversation becomes impossible. Okay, so what would it mean? It would mean that you, to have the conversation, you need to have all this alignment of the ideas. And to have all this alignment, you need to share the process with people of generating the meaning, of agreeing on what is meaningful, on agreeing on what should be paid attention to, on agreeing on what should be a goal. Perhaps not precisely, but generally. So language relies on mutual recognition, and both sides participating in it adjust to each other's signals. And this is very useful because it grounds the common uh, sense, right? Um, it uh, it creates a space of shared ground, you can say, uh, shared assumptions, experiences, situational cues, and etc. In which a space in which both sides continually ensure their mutual understanding, and that this understanding is good enough for current purposes. Because you can't talk to people if you're not, if your talk is completely unproductive for them. So language itself makes your life not about you alone. Uh, because if you would talk the nonsense all the time, which is out of interest for the other party, no one would listen to you. And if it would not be sufficient enough for the current purpose, you, well, you also would not have a productive conversation. So it creates the common ground for people. And it helps people to perfect their understanding, to search for truth, to aim for good enough mutual belief. Maybe it's not precisely objectively accurate, but it's pragmatically sufficient, which is close enough, right? At least for the purpose. Um, and that's why we have questions and answers in the conversations. We have offers and acceptance of the offers. We have statements and the acknowledgement of the statements. We have arguments and discussions because, of course, obviously, we co-construct the meaning. We co-construct the reality. And the structure would imply that understanding is always projects forward. The speaker assumes cooperation before it happens. The speaker assumes or searches for the shared ground. And well, there are different points, of course, for to make this information useful for you, but one of that would be that when you fail to cooperate, you also fail to construct the sufficient enough meaning. You fail to establish the shared ground. You fail in alignment of the goal and attention. And your individual intentions are overpowered by your participatory, but it is a participatory uh, action which helps you to correct and keep correcting um, your insufficient understanding and keep generating the meaning. And that's how